here at TYT Nation. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. Welcome to the show. Let me see if my sound levels are correct. Let me check this out here, and just let me know if you're hearing everybody, or if you're hearing everything okay. Anyway, huge Friday show for you guys today. A lot of stories, a lot of stuff, a lot of TYT Nation. So let's get to it. We're going to talk about, of course, a lot of workers' rights stuff today. We got the tax cuts, of course. We'll talk about Hostess specifically. We also have Amazon tracking its workers. Wonderful. In a crazy new device, we got Jeff Sessions going after Justice, the Injustice Department. We've got progressive victories. Well, fundraising victories, which is great news, and all sorts of other stuff. But what we have today is, of course, we're going to have to talk about the memo as well. So we'll start out with that, and then we'll get to other really important news that everybody else is likely to ignore. Anyway, now, if you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. So that helps us out. I'm just reading your guys' comments to make sure the sound is okay, so it looks good. So, okay, let's move on. A lot of show. Okay. Now, for days, the Republicans have been demanding the White House release the memo. Right? Release the memo. Sean Hannity has, of course, gone on at length about the memo. Oh, it's got to be, there's something in there that is so damaging in the Devin Nunes memo. It's going to take down the FBI. It's going to take down the deep state, right? That's trying to go after Trump. Now, the reason that they say that is because it's supposed to be a gigantic bombshell report that shows clear bias against the president from, of course, like the deep state. Now, does the deep state exist? I would argue that it's yes, but it's not quite as deep as it was before, not quite as entrenched as it was before. But certainly we had the CIA overthrow entire governments, like the government of Iran. Are we doing stuff like that today? Not necessarily. More likely, we don't need to do that anymore because basically our military is owned by the giant corporations. The military-industrial complex just goes and says, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to go and attack this country for their natural resources. So we don't necessarily need deep state machinations when we just outright go and invade countries and steal their resources. Anyway, nonetheless, this is supposed to illustrate this memo that they've got this deep bias against Donald Trump and that they're trying to take him down from the inside. All right, well, so that's why they've been asking for the release of this memo. And so what did they do? They decided, okay, let's release the memo. Now, as I said before, this was written by Devin Nunes. Now, Devin Nunes is a partisan Republican, right? He served on Donald Trump's transition team. So, excuse me if I don't see him as an unbiased source. So, let me go through some of what basically that it pointed out. So, what he did is that he wrote about how a FISA court had granted at least 4 different warrants to monitor a Trump foreign policy advisor, Carter Page. Now, they had one warrant and they had actually 3 different renewals, according to the memo. Now, why would they watch Carter Page? Well, Carter Page was considered a Russian asset. Now, before everybody freaks out, I'm going to let you know that this had nothing to do with the Trump campaign when they originally granted this warrant. So this was way back in 2013. He had apparently met with Russian spies and was possibly recruited by one. So he met with this guy. This was before Trump. This is before the 2016 election. 2016 was a twinkle in Hillary Clinton's eye. Okay, back in 2013. Like, maybe I'll run for it, maybe not, I don't know. It is definitely before Donald Trump even considered running for president, at least this time. So, why would the FBI watch Carter Page? because, again, he met with this Russian government spy. Now, so the FBI, they notice this. They're like, boy, this guy is acting strange. Let's watch him, right? Let's see what this guy is all about. Now, according to Vox, the Bureau was looking into a suspected Russian spy ring and learned that one of their suspects, Victor Podobny, had met with Carter Page in hopes of finding a potential recruit. In fact, Podobny was caught on wiretap discussing Carter Page. So they have tape of this. And it says, quote, he writes to me in Russian to practice the language. He flies to Moscow more than I do. He got hooked on Gazprom thinking that if they have a project, he could rise up. Maybe he can. I don't know. But it's obvious that he wants to earn lots of money. I will feed him empty promises. You promise a favor for a favor. You get the documents from him and you tell him to go fuck himself. So this is a Russian spy trying to recruit Carter Page to get information about the American government. Now, why would they want to do that? Because, well, governments spy on each other. That's what they do. You don't think we're spying on Russia right now? You don't think we have spies in Russia? Of course we have spies in Russia. We have spies in all sorts of different countries. Why would they not spy on us? That's kind of how things work. Look, we even spy on our allies. We spy on Germany. We spy on the UK. We spy on France. We spy in on everybody, and everybody spies in on us. That's unfortunately a reality that we have in our world. Everybody spies on each other just to know what each other's doing and to see what kind of advantages they can get. So is there no surprise that there were Russians back in 2013 and probably a long time before that were spying into America? Not a surprise at all. This shouldn't surprise you whatsoever. And that there are sometimes Americans that are like, hey, I want to rise up. I want to join this spy ring and maybe get some power and all that stuff. And that's what Carter Page had alleged to have done. Now, Podobny, he said one more interesting thing about Page. He said, quote, I think Page, he is an idiot. That's awesome. Again, so they looked into him, right? So, again, 3 different renewals of this warrant to surveil Carter Page. But the Nunes memo goes out and says, yeah, but we don't really care so much about that. It's the fact that Rosenstein had went in and extended this surveillance back in 2016, and all of that was based on the Steele memo, the Steele dossier, sorry. Now, because of what was apparently in the Steele dossier, they decided to look into Page later on in 2016. So now you say, of course, see, it is fake because the Steele dossier is 100% fake. You know why? Because it was funded by the Clintons. Of course. So anything touched by the Clintons obviously must be, by definition, completely 100% false and fake. Therefore, we got our answer. Bias, absolute bias. But wait a minute, that. So, yes, was this funded by the Clintons? Of course, right? Was it opposition research meant to make Donald Trump look bad? Of course. Hey, guess what? Campaigns do opposition research. That's what happens. That's what they do. Now, is everything in the Steele memo, Steele dossier, 100% fact? Absolutely not. So much of that Steele dossier is actually unverified. There's some verified parts, but mostly a lot of it's unverified. So please understand that. But even talking about that, right? There seems to be enough enough information for a federal judge to not only continue this warrant once, twice, but 3 times. Or do you think that federal judge was in the pocket of Hillary Clinton? You decide. Right? But FISA renewals generally indicate that a judge happens to be convinced that surveillance was yielding information about a target, acting as an agent of a foreign power. And they decide, based on that they would merit continuous monitoring. So even that judge, unless you believe that they're a plant of Hillary Clinton, okay. They say that it's enough information to watch Page. Now, that does not mean that Donald Trump is involved personally, right? But see, here's what the Republicans are doing. They're using this highly partisan memo that supposedly points out some kind of inherent bias within the FBI to try to discredit the Mueller investigation. And that's the whole point of this memo. They go after Rosenstein, right? Because Rosenstein signed one of those requests. And the rest of them, of course, were signed by James Comey. So they point at that and go, aha, James Comey, anti-Trump, big Trump bias. So we can't trust these FISA, warrants at all. And we can't trust any of the information at all. They're biased against Trump. And of course, now Rosenstein biased against Trump, even though Rosenstein was appointed to be there by Trump. But see, the reason that Trump despises Rosenstein is because he appointed Mueller to the investigation after Jeff Sessions had recused himself from the investigation. That, of course, also has earned the ire of President Trump. So he hates everybody at this point. And the reason that he did that is because he wants Mueller gone. That is the ultimate goal. He does not like Mueller. Mueller was poking around in his bank accounts. I can understand why you would be angry about that. Like, hey, get out of my stuff, get out of my information. But wait, what does the Republicans say? If you have nothing to hide, well then, why are you hiding? Why do you not want people to get into your stuff if you have nothing to hide? So, look, and again, to get rid of Mueller, he would have to get rid of Rosenstein, because Rosenstein will not fire him. So if they can show proof of bias through this memo that, again, was hyper-partisan, then he can get rid of Rosenstein, he can appoint someone who's friendly to him, and then eliminate Mueller himself. That's the overall plan of this. And so, is it effective? I don't think so. Now, of course, you look at Republicans, got him, bias. But overall, there's really nothing in this memo that really warrants anything. Yes, they looked at Carter Page. And that's it. But Steele dossier. And I'm still waiting for why is this a bombshell? This is nothing. But again, Republicans are going to make a gigantic deal of it because, again, they're going after the FBI not because they care about rule of law, not because they care about actual, like justice. No, it's because I want to get rid of our political opponents. And that's what this is. Okay. So with that, I will go on to real news. Glad I could get that out of the way. All right. Another big company has decided to share in the bounty that they have received from the Donald Trump tax cuts. Now, Hostess brand, according to The Hill, announced that it will give workers one-time bonuses of $1,250 and 1 year of free snacks as a result of the GOP tax legislation. Wow, look at that. Now, they said that workers will receive the monetary bonus in the form of $750 in cash and a $500 contribution to their 401k plans, which, by the way, that is dependent on the stock market. So if the stock market takes a crap, well, then there goes your 401k. Now, Hostess Executive Chairman C. Dean Metropolis told Bloomberg in a statement that the changes to the tax plan have allowed the company to alter its benefit structure. They said the company's management and board take great pleasure in sharing the company's success with our employees. Okay, so we have seen this before, right? So Carrier, Walmart, AT&T, Comcast, and others, they are giving out bonuses. Wonderful. Now, they're claiming that their benevolence is the result of the gigantic tax cuts that will trickle down to their workers. Oh, see, we got these tax cuts, and now we can finally afford to give our workers a raise. Actually, we're not giving them a raise, but we're going to give them a bonus. Okay, but here, in many cases, unfortunately, these bonuses were given as a way to cover up the fact that they were actually laying people off. Again, Carrier is definitely guilty of that. AT&T, Comcast, Walmart, Sam's Club, all that, laying thousands, in some cases thousands of people off. But hey, we gave you a bonus. The people that are still there, and only if you were there about 20 years. In the case of Walmart. Now, to be fair, Hostess is fortunately not doing that. They're done laying people off. It's because they had already laid people off back in 2012. See, Hostess has had some issues. They actually went through a bankruptcy. So I'm going to read you an article here from the New York Times. The company had filed for bankruptcy under the private equity firm Ripplewood Holdings. Months later, with Ripplewood having lost control of the company's creditors and the company's creditors in charge, Hostess was shut down and its workers were sent home for good. So all these people, about 8,000 in total, lost their jobs. Now, that's not the end of the story. Well, it turns out private equity firms decided, we're going to go and we're going to save parts of Hostess. We're going to save the Twinkies. We're going to come in, we're going to buy up some of these properties, buy up the name, and go and restructure the company. Now, this is investment firm Apollo Global Management and Metropolis and Company, which spent about $186 million in cash to buy some of Hostess's snack cake bakeries and brands early 2013. Less than 4 years later, they sold the company in a deal that valued Hostess at a whopping $2.3 billion. You spend $186 million, you get back $2.3 billion. That is a return on investment of about 13 times. Damn. So look at that. Now, let's take a look at how much of that money the CEOs have received, right? Now, the top executives at 6 publicly traded private equity firms, right? These are just equity firms, on average, made about $211 million back in 2015. Now, Leon Black, founder of Apollo, made exactly that in 2015. So, again, they bought a company for $186 million, and the CEO itself got $200 million after turning the company around. Now, of course, unfortunately, part of that turnaround involved what they call downsizing. The new Hostess employs only about a total of 1,200 people. That is a fraction of the roughly 8,000 workers who lost their job at Hostess snack cake businesses during the bankruptcy. Now, some Hostess employees, they did get their jobs back, only to lose them again. Now, under Apollo and Metropolis, for example, Hostess shut down one of the plants they reopened in Illinois, costing a total of 415 jobs. So, when companies do that, they come in, these venture capitalist companies, private equity firms come in, and this reminds me of Bain Capital. What would they do? Well, they would go in, they would buy up the company cheap, and then they would sell off assets, and then they would fire people. And that's exactly what happened. And in addition, they would pocket the money. So the heads of these private equity firms now make on average 10 times more than the heads of some of the bigger banks. So they're making tons and tons of money. And of course, that's hundreds of times more than their workers actually make. So it's important that I tell you that so that you know the context. So they give these workers bonuses now. There's 1,200 workers, and it's a $1,250 bonus, right? So that adds up to a total of, drumroll please, $1.5 million. They are a $1 billion company. They're worth at least $2.3 billion. So how much was executive compensation for this company in 2016? It was a total of $64 million. So, you know who got most of that? Surprisingly, not the CEO of Hostess, but it's actually the executive of Metropolis. That is C. Dean Metropolis, right? He received $61 million in 2016 of executive compensation. Hey, but look, we gave a one-time bonus. That bonus is merely change in the pockets of the true owners of this company, the private equity firms. Look, if you keep wondering why I bring up these bonuses and why I say that's not enough, it's not enough, why I keep complaining about them, it's because these bonuses are literally peanuts for the executives. These are people giving them, like, these executives are throwing them crumbs. And these tax cuts, by the way, are saving these same executives billions of dollars. And again, the one time bonuses, they're not doing anything to offset the damage that these tax cuts will actually have on the American people. For example, they removed the individual mandate. So, what will happen? Insurance premiums will go up. If there's less people in the market, you will end up paying higher premiums for the insurance that you pay. Even your companies are no longer contributing as much to healthcare plans as the employee. You are sharing more of that cost. You are paying more of that cost. So again, that one-time bonus doesn't really help you. In fact, most of that bonus will likely be eaten by rising premiums. And all while that happens, government services will disappear, and of course, the price of things will continue to rise. And yes, while that bonus might look nice, a wage increase would actually be far more beneficial to the workers because it's actually a more effective way to share the gains of the company. Now, that will cost the company more, obviously, if you're paying the employees more. So, like, we'll go with the one time bonus and, basically for PR purposes and claim that the tax cuts are wonderful. But instead of course, raising wages, again, they do this bonus and they decide, hey, let's also throw in a free box of snack cakes. Enjoy. Again, they're literally throwing crumbs from the table, right? These companies, like I said, they'll save billions of dollars in taxes. And of course, they want to give you that bonus that's not even equal to 1 month's rent in many places and a box of snack cakes. This is the literal definition of let them eat cake, or in this case, a Twinkie, which may or may not be cake. Um, I don't really honestly know what it is. But now, of course, there's a lot of right wingers out there that are going to think, no, what are you talking about? This is awesome. We love that they're giving out these bonuses. Yay, corporations. They're trickling down, just like they said. But wait, there's a recent poll that said that only 2% of people feel like they've received any sort of benefit from these tax cuts in the form of, again, bonuses and raises. So no matter how many crumbs they throw at you, I remind you that it shouldn't distract you from the fact that most of the gains from these tax cuts go to the very, very rich. So whenever you see one of these articles that are out there about, oh, such and such gave another one-time bonus, that means the tax cuts must be great. Don't fall for it. Round the nation. All right, welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here, TYT Nation. Got plenty more show for you guys here today. I think I need one more quick adjustment here on the sound. And okay. Hopefully that's not too loud. We'll turn that down just a little bit. Somehow my sound levels got reset, and it's really messing with my my controls here. All right, anyway. We have more. Let's go after Amazon. Actually, no. Should I go after Amazon or... Fuck it. Amazon. All right. Before I get back into it, sorry. Please hit the like and share. Especially important that you share out the stream to make sure that everybody can find it. So, okay. Now we can go. Okay. So Amazon has won recently start that again. So Amazon had recently won 2 patents on a wristband that would track employees and even vibrate when those employees engage in what they would consider to be undesirable behavior. Now, what is undesirable? Well, that might include stopping, stretching, or even taking a bathroom break. In fact, if you are not hard at work, this bracelet or wristband will vibrate at you. Wonderful. Now, again, the machines have taken over. According to the New York Times, the retail giant, which plans to build a second headquarters and recently shortlisted 20 potential host cities for it, has been known to experiment in-house with new technology before selling it worldwide. Amazon has already had a reputation for workplace culture that thrives on hard-hitting management and has experimented with how far it can push white-collar workers in order to reach its delivery targets. And so this, of course, this wristband would be a part of that effort. Now, the patent applications filed in 2016 were published in September, and Amazon won them this week, according to GeekWire, which reported the patent's publication on Tuesday. In theory, the proposed technology would emit ultrasonic sound pulses and radio transmissions to track where an employee's hands were in relation to inventory bins and provide what they call haptic feedback to steer the worker towards the correct bin. The aim, Amazon says, is to streamline time-consuming tasks like responding to orders and packaging them for speedy delivery. With guidance from a wristband, they say workers could fill orders faster. So, to that I say, no. Fuck no. I do not like this at all. So you're gonna put wristbands on people to track what they're doing and where their hands are. Where does it end? Where does it end? Now, of course, some of you might be thinking, you know what, not a big deal, right? They don't want their workers screwing around on the job. So this is one way to get them, because they've got people, the workers they're gonna be lazy. So you got to track them. You got to make sure that they're doing their job correctly. Well, look, the problem here is the implication, right? That your job will now have complete control over what you do in most of your life. Because, look, like it or not, you spend most of your lives at work. So much so now that they're getting control over where you're going and what you're doing at all times. And they can see where you are, what you're doing. I think that has the outcome of dehumanization. In fact, Max Crawford, a former Amazon warehouse worker in the UK, said in a phone interview with the New York Times, quote, "After a year of working on the floor, I felt like I had become a version of the robots I was working with." Now, he described having to process hundreds of items in an hour, a pace so extreme that one day he said he fell over from dizziness. Quote, "There was no time to go to the loo," which, of course, is the British toilet, if you didn't already know that. He said you had to process the items in seconds and then move on. If you didn't meet the targets, you were fired. Now, he said he worked back and forth at two Amazon warehouses for more than 2 years, and then in 2015 decided to quit because of health concerns. Quote, I got burned out. Look, working at that pace, I wouldn't be surprised. Crawford also agreed that the wristbands might save time and labor, but he said the tracking was, quote, stalkerish, and feared the workers might be unfairly scrutinized if their hands were found to be, quote, in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like, what if you got to scratch your balls? Like, what's going to happen? It's going to buzz at you if you do that. Like, this is crazy. He said, quote, they want to turn people into machines. The robotic technology isn't up to scratch yet, so until it is, they'll just use human robots. So again, this technology is aimed at dehumanizing people. And look, yes, it starts with a vibrating nudge and tracking software. When does it start going to electric shocks? I know, super extreme. But seriously though, if the workers at Amazon accept this technology and it goes worldwide, well then when does wearing one become mandatory? And that's the problem. Oh, come on, Jeff, that'll never ever happen. The people will revolt. In America? No. In France, sure. In the UK, probably. But in America, we have passively accepted the workplace taking over our lives. We no longer have sufficient, unions, for example, labor union power to be able to fight off the corporations. So if your job is tied to you having to wear some sort of stalkerish wristband, well then, what are you going to do? Got to have a job, right? Got to work. And of course, people in America, they don't band together to fight back. For the most part, no. We just passively accept these things. But look, again, I'm somebody who used to work in factories, right? I used to work in manufacturing. I used to work in retail. And I could totally see situations where this would be utilized. Now, current and former Amazon employees also agree with that. They said that the companies use similar tracking technology in its warehouses and said that they would not be surprised if they decided to put the patents into practice. So, hey, tracking devices coming to workplaces near you. Now, if you think labor rights and unions still don't have a place in the society, examples of things like this is why you are wrong. Right now, we have gone so far backwards when it comes to labor rights, while the technology is getting bigger and scarier. So you combine those two things, it's not good. So, look, we got to fight back. And how do we fight back? We band together. We got to get back and actually fight for unions. I know. In America, unions are a dirty word. Oh, they give to Democrats and they protect lazy people. No, they fight against things like this. That's what labor unions are for. Oh, but they've outlived their usefulness. Shit like this shows me that they have not, that there is a use for them. We do need to fight back before it's too late. Because again, the machines are taking over. And these are corporations. And so, look, we need to fight back before it's too late and before the corporations decide that they can rule all over us, over every aspect of our lives in the drive for relentless profit. Okay. I have another Amazon-ish story. So, let's move to that. Here we go. Where are you? Nope. Okay. Whole Foods employees are pretty upset at Amazon's new inventory system that they say is making their workplace miserable. Now, recently, Whole Foods employees spoke with Business Insider about these changes in the inventory system and the way that they're evaluated in managing it. Now, specifically, the employees say that their morale is getting hampered by what they call a draconian scorecard system that penalizes employees for even the slightest of infractions in how the store is managed. So here's how it works. Now, the scorecard system requires employees to satisfactorily complete 90% of items on a checklist that store managers use to evaluate performance. Now, look, 90%, hey, look, you want your workers to do the best, right? So some people might be like, that seems reasonable. I mean, you want them to do pretty well. Not until you realize that any scores below 90% are considered absolute failures and can result in somebody being fired. So, hey, get an 89%, sad day, you're gone. Get out. There's more. Store managers are expected to regularly quiz employees on information about their department's sales goals, top selling items, previous week's sales, and other information. Hey, what were the sales for last week? I don't fucking know. Like, I don't even know what the sales are this week. I mean, look, that's a lot of information. If you're a store shelf stocker, why are you supposed to know the department's sales goals? I can understand knowing maybe some of the sales for this week, but last week's sales, why would that be important? It's crazy. It's crazy. It gets worse. They said that every item in our department has a designated spot that is labeled or marked, according to a Colorado Whole Foods worker talking to the Business Insider. He said that if that item is even an inch outside of its designated spot, we receive negative marks. So, again, there's not a lot of room for error if you need a 90%. So if you get like a can of peas or something that's out of place, negative marks. That could be the difference of you being fired or not. That's crazy. And look, all of us, I'm sure we've all done it. We have taken an item off the shelf. Maybe we looked at it. Maybe we read the nutrition facts and decided, nah, don't really want it. And we put it back. Okay. And look, sometimes people, and I've seen it before, and look, I'm ashamed to admit it, but I've done it, put things back in places where they don't belong. We've all done it. We've all done it. So, unfortunately, if you do this at a Whole Foods, and the employee doesn't catch it and put things back perfectly where it belongs, it's their ass. It's their ass. They're gone. Now, that is a draconian system, if I've ever seen one. Holy crap. Now, of course, this has had a very, very negative impact on people working there. For example, a Whole Foods supervisor says that they dread coming into work for fear that someone from the corporate office will be there to brutally evaluate their team's work. They said, quote, I wake up in the middle of the night from nightmares about maps and inventory. And when regional leadership is going to come in and see one thing wrong and fail the team. They said, quote, the stress has created such a tense working environment, seeing someone cry at work is becoming normal. We created these machines called corporations, and they have turned against us. They've only got one goal, maximize profit for the shareholders. And so, hey, look, if they have to implement systems that crush their workers' emotional well-being, that is an acceptable price for us to pay in this brave new world, because at the end of the day, from their perspective, the workers are replaceable, easily replaceable. And that is sad. Look, I've had workplace stress before, right? Let me give you an example. I worked at Electrolux during the summer. It was my first factory job out of high school. They worked us so hard at one point that I woke up in the morning and I was having a waking dream where refrigerator doors, like on a assembly line, were coming through my window. I woke up and saw that. That's crazy. I've had dreams about being at work before and being behind. That's the stuff. That's what we're doing to our workers. Like, we're damaging people's mental well-being and their health. It's crazy. But that's what we're doing. And it's because we've unfortunately allowed these machines to take over our lives. We have got to fight back. Okay. We got more stories, so stay right here. I'm not going away. More workplace stuff here. So recently, the Trump Labor Department, under Alexander Acosta, had proposed a rule that would allow employers to pool their tips of workers. Now, the proposal would change the Fair Labor Standards Act to allow employers to pool the tips of workers who make at least the federal minimum wage. Now, why would they try to do that? Well, they argue that it's a matter of fairness. In fact, they claim that the tip money would go back to back of the house workers, like cooks and stuff like that, to make their pay a little bit more equal to tipped workers. Now, is this a good policy? Well, consider who's behind it. This is backed by the National Restaurant Association. So basically, they're like, well, let's just take those tips and redistribute them so we don't have to pay our employees more. So instead of paying back to the line employees more to bring them up to parity with tipped workers, we're just going to take the money from the tipped workers and give it to everybody else. So you can understand why the National Restaurant Association would be in favor of this. But this is worse, right? Because this rule does not say that the bosses can't steal that or can't take part of that money too. And of course, that's exactly what a lot of people said would happen. In fact, the Economic Policy Institute found in an analysis last month that employers could end up pocketing $5.8 billion worth of gratuities earned by their employees each year as a result of this rule. So they take the money that's pooled together and they put it in their pocket. But wait, I thought it was supposed to go to the back of the line people, the cooks and such. No. Hey, the rule doesn't say that I have to give it to them. I just pool you give the employer all your tips, and the employer says, "Thank you, sir." Right in my pocket. Ha ha. And the Labor Department lets me do so. So, look, they can justify it. Hey, look, I'm a boss, but I don't get tips. I work here. So, yes, I'm a non-tipped employee. Therefore, I'm going to take some of that money myself. But that's not fair. And so, look, when people see that, they think this rule is terrible. Well, so now here's the response from the Trump administration upon seeing that study. According to Bloomberg, the Labor Department decided earlier to just suppress that analysis. Senior department officials, after viewing an annual projection that billions of dollars in tips could transfer to businesses as a result of this proposal, ordered staff to revise the data methodology to lessen the expected impact, according to several sources. Successive calculations showed progressively reduced values, but Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta and his team are said to have still been uncomfortable with including the data in the eventual proposal. The office disagreed with assumptions in the analysis that employers would retain their employees' gratuities rather than redistribute the money to other hourly workers. They wound up receiving approval from the White House to publish the proposal on December 5th that removed the economic transfer data altogether, sources say. So understand, first, they come up with this rule, right? Yeah, let's let the employees handle all the tips and redistribute them at will without watching them. Oh, well, don't worry. We trust that they'll do the right thing. No, of course not. They're not going to do the right thing. So this study comes out and says they could not, they don't have to do the right thing because there's nothing in there that says that you can't just steal these and pocket these tips. So what do? Well, first they're like, okay, let's downplay this, right? Let's change the methodology. Ooh, we still don't like the answer because it looks like still some of these people will pocket the tips. So then they decided, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just drop the study completely. Report is not favorable. Let's scrub it. Let's get rid of it. This is what they do when things are unfavorable to them. This is the Trump administration, man. Look, if you believe that any of these people including Trump, gave a shit about you, then you are deluding yourself. I suggest that you go and watch a little bit of George Carlin, because what he says about it being a big club and you not being in it, it was true then, and it's definitely true now. Okay. We got more. Okay. So Jeff Sessions and the Justice Department are now shutting down an office that helps poor people get legal aid. Now, people familiar with the matter told the New York Times that the Office for Access to Justice has seen its staff leave the office over the past few months, and its acting director, Maha Jawed, stepped down from the department. Now, what happened? Well, it turns out the Trump administration is not all that interested in helping poor people. Well, color me surprised, but what really happened? Well, according to Career Justice Department officials talking to the Times, they said that new administrations often change or end projects begun by previous administrations in order to reallocate resources to their own priorities. And while Sessions can't officially close the office without informing Congress, he can reallocate its resources to other divisions. So here's what happened. Jeff Sessions saw this and was like, poor people? Why are we helping poor people get legal representation? No. Switch that out. Take the resources here and put it into, I don't know, enforcing anti-pot laws. I don't know. Let's do our war on drugs. I don't know if that's where the people went. But obviously, it didn't go for helping poor people receive representation. Now, this office began in 2010 under former Attorney General Eric Holder. Now, what it was supposed to do is that it was dedicated to improving the accessibility of legal aid for the poor and needy in both civil and criminal courts. So, here we go again. They don't like this. They don't like the fact that poor people can get representation, can get government help getting representation. So they said, let's get rid of it because we don't care about poor people. We would actually like to crush poor people and give everything that we can to the rich. I'm sure Sessions looked at this and said, this is completely not essential. I mean, why should we help poor people find representation anyway? It's not like they've given me anything. They didn't sign any of my donor checks. Yeah, but the whole point of the Justice Department is actually to enforce justice, to ensure actual justice. Now, this decision, of course, there's a racial angle to it. This is going to harm people that are the most vulnerable, namely African Americans, Latinos, and poor working class white people. So everybody who's at the fringe of society, who are not middle class, who are not rich, they're going to be affected by this. Basically, anybody who can't afford to hire a decent legal representation. But I know there's the argument of, wait a minute, but that's what public defenders are for, right? So they should just go to public defenders. Well, look, public defenders, while have good intentions, I think, for the most part, are underpaid, they're stretched out, they're stretched thin, and in some cases underqualified to go up against other lawyers. And so I think a lot of those people are, again, undertrained, underqualified, and are probably there looking to get experience so they can get into better law firms. And besides, I believe only public defenders help in criminal proceedings. But what if you need to do something that's a civil infraction? What if your landlord was breaking contracts and you had to go and get a lawyer to be able to go and sue that landlord for doing whatever? You can't do that if you don't have the money to hire a lawyer. Or maybe you're being sued. Or maybe there's something that you need a lawyer, that you need representation for, and you happen to be too poor to be able to afford one. If you can't afford that representation, you are screwed. And this isn't the only thing that Sessions has done recently to screw poor people. He had also rescinded an Obama-era directive to lower courts advising them to avoid imposing large fees and penalties on poor defendants. Those fees, in many cases, have resulted in the return of so-called debtors' prisons. According to the ACLU, reports revealed that poor people were being locked up in the states of Georgia, Washington, Mississippi, and elsewhere without court hearings or legal representation when they were unable to pay fines and fees for traffic tickets or other civil infractions or criminal offenses. So civil infractions too. So now we have the return of debtors' prisons. In fact, Ferguson was doing the same thing. And those judges and a lot of the police departments operated from funding based on that, on keeping people in jail or doing these fines and fees. And again, when they can't afford to pay, they throw them in jail. This is a sick system that we have in America, where you can be locked up for just not having enough money. And this is despite the U.S. having actually banned debtors' prisons for over 2 centuries. And yet, these areas, these states, are actually finding ways around that ban to be able to go and enforce debtors' prisons. It's gross. These decisions, furthermore, show that the Department of Justice, under Jeff Sessions, is not at all interested in actual justice. Unless, of course, you happen to be wealthy and connected and happen to give Jeff Sessions campaign donations. This is the result when the right wing controls the government. Still like voting for Republicans? Not if you're poor. Okay. So with all that depressing news, I have one good story here that's going to make you guys feel a lot better. Okay. Okay, give me a second here. Now, ever since Bernie Sanders put out the call for regular people to go and run for office, a lot of progressives have jumped into local races with very, very few resources, not a lot of money, but a lot of hope and progressive visions. So a lot of these people, again, are facing establishment Democrats and, of course, establishment Republicans as well that receive a lot of money from corporations and wealthy donors. So these progressives have a lot of disadvantages, right? However, thanks to people power and thanks to what Bernie Sanders showed us during the 2016 election or the primaries, where you could actually raise money from small donors, a lot of these progressives are actually raising money and in some cases outraising their establishment opponents. Now, this is from The Intercept. This is Lee Fong writing for The Intercept along with Ryan Grimm. They said that the National Journal counted some 30 Democrats that outraised incumbent Republicans this past quarter, and at least 6 progressive insurgents have managed to outraise their establishment Democratic opponents in House races in the final quarter of 2017. So this is excellent news. Now, look, normally Democrats, of course, the establishment raises money from big corporate donors and PACs, including super PACs. But now, of course, since Bernie Sanders, who ran on small dollar donations, that model has begun to change. In fact, the Bernie Sanders model of appealing directly to the people has actually powered a lot of regular progressive candidates. Now, let me give you some examples. Ammar Campa-Najjar is running in California's 50th district against Republican Duncan Hunter and Democrat Josh Butner. Now, Butner has the backing of the New Democrat Coalition PAC, which is, of course, your pro-Wall Street wing of House Democrats. So these are your pro-establishment, big money corporate Democrats. Now, Campa-Najjar had raised more than $175,000, largely with small donors, in the fourth quarter, to Butner's roughly $105,000. Hunter, of course, the Republican in this race, he seems to be spending more on legal fees than he's actually taking in. So, and he's got corruption charges. So you've got your corrupt Republican right there. Now, let me give you another example. Jess King. Now, I mentioned Jess King on another segment here, another video. Now, she is running for Pennsylvania's 16th district. Now, she had raised $195,000. That is a lot more than the incumbent Republican Lloyd Smucker. Now, Smucker raised about $133,000, and Christina Hartman brought in $185,000. Now, of course, Hartman has all the big endorsements. And for example, she has Emily's List and a lot of these more establishment endorsements that King was trying to get, but they ignored her. Oh, well, you can't raise money. You're not a viable candidate. Well, Jess King raised $195,000 in a quarter. She outraised both the Republican and the establishment Democrat. Why is she not getting the endorsement? Why is she not getting the nomination? Because she is progressive. And of course, there are the establishment is fighting progressives tooth and nail. And it's because they don't want progressives to win. Now, here's the thing, right? When you raise that much money, and I mentioned this in the other piece that The Intercept did as well, where the first thing out of Democrats' mouth when it comes to these endorsements is how much money can you raise? How much money can your campaign raise? Because we only look at one thing, money. You got to get the money to amplify your message. And look, you do need money to run campaigns. You can't run a campaign without actually raising a significant amount of money because, of course, you need to hire staff, you need to do ads. But the thing is that the money should not be the only metric. It is, yes, an important part, but policy should also be an important part. Not only that, but having a large volunteer base, knocking on doors, and all that stuff. If you bring all these things to a campaign, then I think the Democratic Party, or whatever party your nomination you're running for, has to take you seriously. And you add in, if you add into all that, outraising your establishment opponent, that's got to make them pay attention. And of course, it is they are paying attention, and sometimes very negatively. Now, let me give you one more example of a progressive that's actually outraising their opponents. Greg Edwards, Greg Edwards, running in Pennsylvania's 15th district, outraised the rest of the Democratic field by relying on small donors with the backing of the Justice Democrats and the PCCC. John Heenan, running as progressive Montana against a more established Democrat, also outraised his opponent, Laura Moser, running in a suburban Houston seat with a grassroots army of thousands behind her. Managed to outraise her Emily's List-backed opponent, Lizzie Peniel Fletcher, though felt short of Alex Trantafillis, a former Goldman Sachs analyst running as a Democrat. So, again, look, this points out that a lot of these smaller progressive campaigns have serious power behind them. And where is that power coming from? It's coming from you guys. These progressives, they're not raising money from corporate PACs. This is all small dollar donations from you guys. You're the ones that are powering these campaigns. You're the ones that are fighting. And you're fighting the good fight. And you're actually winning when it comes to outraising and helping these Democrats outraise their opponents. Now, look, this is important because, again, first they ignore you, right? Which they did to a lot of these progressive challengers. You had a lot of people in the establishment look at independent groups like Our Revolution and Justice Democrats, and they laugh. They laugh and they laugh. Oh, look at these little progressive groups. They could never win. We get our money from Wall Street because that's where the real money is. Oh, shit. It looks like a lot of these progressive challengers, they're not only right on the popular issues, but they're also outraising us. Oh, no. Oh, no. Which brings me, of course, to the next thing. Then they start to fight you. Well, in a lot of these races, we have seen that Democrats are fighting. For one, by withholding key endorsements. For two, let me give you an example. In Illinois, the establishment is actually trying to push two progressives off the ballot. In Michigan, they're also doing the same thing to Abdul al-Sayed, who's running for the governor of Michigan as a progressive. So they are fighting. But what's the next part of that? Then you win. And in the end, as we always do, progressives will win. And it's going to be if all of us work together. Bernie Sanders said it best, right? Not me, us. It is about us. And so as long as we keep getting together and powering these progressive campaigns and staying involved, and look, if you can't give money, volunteer. Go out there, give your time. Knock on doors, phone bank. All that stuff is incredibly important to these progressive challengers. Only if we get together and we work together and we fight together will we win. And I think if we can continue to do that, that's exactly what will happen. Let's go out there. Let's go get them. Okay. That's it. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share on the stream, either YouTube or Facebook, whatever platform you happen to be on. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already too. And if you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/TYTNation. Sign up to give a monthly donation that helps keep us independent and non-corporate sponsored. So, all right, everybody. Thank you. Love you guys. You're amazing, as usual. And you're why the show exists. So, anyway, have a wonderful weekend. Safe and happy weekend. We'll be back on Monday. So, we'll see you then. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation.